it's Georgie the Goblin, and welcome to the official Family of Gamers podcast. The podcast where Andrew and Coach talk all things war games, board games, and much, much more. And here are your hosts, Andrew and Coach.
Welcome, everybody, to Family Gamers podcast. I have the distinct privilege and honor to have one of my favorite authors slash game designers slash background fellow lover of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog here with none other than Sir Gav Thorpe. How are you, Gav? How are you doing today?
I am great, thank you very much. Yes, I think only royalty can bestow the sir, but that's cool.
If anybody should be knighted, it's you. Absolutely, I will put a good word in. So,
all right, thank you.
But I will say,
chat to Charlie.
Yeah, I my next go around my world tour. So 2 years ago, we were at Adepticon and we saw Xeogenesis, and then this year, I had a chance to actually get the demo because last year I couldn't even get close to it, and this year I got a demo, which I have to tell you, and then we did the interview, which got a lot of views. It was great for us. We were happy, more than happy to spread the word around. And I have to tell you, I wish we would have just kept taping because me and you talked for, I don't know, an hour after that of non-Xeogenesis, but stuff that we were into. And I have to say, it was really the highlight of my Adepticon, getting to meet you. And like we say, when you meet somebody, and I was like, wow, you know what? Gav is a good guy. He's not a dick. It's fantastic. It makes us, we're just so happy to meet somebody, and it's like, oh wow, this is a great guy. I've been reading his books for years, playing games for years, and now we get to meet him. And I just want to tell you that was it was the highlight of my Adepticon this year. So
thank you. That was cool, and it was cool to meet you as well. Again, meeting people, you get to do it rarely, especially when your job is sitting behind a keyboard and tapping away all day. And particularly with the internet and all that kind of stuff, it's very easy to get a very skewed vision of fans and community and stuff like that, which is why I like getting out and talking to people properly, because it's very reaffirming. Not just because it's kind of cool that people say, "Hey, I like your stuff," but just chatting and remembering that there's just people out there enjoying their own thing. And for the most part, they're just playing their games, reading books, doing all the cool stuff that I like and have fun with as well. And I think it's important to remember that even as a professional, you're still part of that community. Yeah, and so for me, getting out from behind the desk and meeting people at school, I get to actually chat to people. So it's very easy to disappear into your own little headspace as well if you're not careful. Just hey, some feedback from an editor, but that's it.
Right. So, I mean, if you've been under a rock for the past, I don't know what, 25, 30 years, and you don't know who Gav is, obviously we know Black Library, the different books. I know. I will say that the Strontium Dog and the Judge Dredd miniature games, which you were involved with, are like two of my favorite miniature games. Not only the characters, we were talking about that at Adepticon, how like Judge Dredd was kind of a pivotal character in our growing up, because I think we're pretty much the same age, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, that because with us, Dredd didn't come over for me to find Judge Dredd comics. I'd have to go into Manhattan. I had to go like St. Mark's Comics, which is an indie shop, and they had all these questionable topics of sexuality, crazy stuff. And then in there was 2000 AD and Judge Dredd. So we had to hunt for it. And then I think the big thing was when Anthrax came out with their song, he became it was weird though, but that became, when he was singing about it, I was like, oh wait, I've been reading him for about 3 years, 4 years, and now I know who this guy is. And then to play him on the tabletop, which was cool, but sometimes you get a game of a character you love and it's not that good. But actually the Judge Dredd game was really, like, for us, really enjoyable. It seemed like it had a underground community that was very fervent of it. And when we did our videos of it, people were very receptive and really liked it. So, um, yeah, that I just want to
Yeah,
say that was
yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, it's a similar sort of experience. I mean, obviously, I didn't have to go into Manhattan, but for us getting stuff, for me, the opposite experience, I suppose. We used to travel down to London. I used to travel down to London to a friend, and there was a second-hand comic shop, and they had quite a lot of US imports, and that's where I found like still got the first issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for instance. Like again, it wasn't a thing,
Right.
or and again small types. So, but yeah, 2000 AD. I grew up reading the comics, loving those same characters, and between that and Warhammer, they were the biggest kind of influences and the biggest thing that on my teenage self of my sort of cultural upbringing. So eventually working on both, I guess you don't. It was an ambition fulfilled. I'd still love to try and maybe write a comic one day, perhaps for 2000 AD or something. But working on the game and working on those characters that I've known 40 years and was great. And working on that with Andy as well, who's another big fan. Warlord really good. They gave us a lot of space to kind of develop the game we wanted to. So yeah, and we're pleased. Yeah, I mean, it seems to have connected with people. The fact that we came from it with that intent and with that sort of background, but also we wanted to capture the comics and put it on the tabletop. That was the main thing. It's like, well, if we're going to play this game, like I say, there's a lot of time. There's things get translated into a tabletop game or a role-playing game, and they kind of miss the point, or they lose because they broaden out and they have to do certain things for that medium. They end up starting to lose a bit of the setting or the characters that they're from. So,
right.
they introduce. It's like having I don't know, people running around casting fireballs in Lord of the Rings or something. Go, well, that's just not how magic works in Lord of the Rings. We go, oh, but we need this wizard class, And it's a similar. We wanted to avoid that. We wanted, quite a lot of the Jed games, in particular in the past, just become kind of generic games. We wanted to make sure it's very focused on judges and Mega City One, and particularly with Strontium Dog as well. That centering Johnny and Wolf as the part of the experience, and so you can create your own mutants, you can do your own thing, but actually it was very much getting those characters from the comic onto the tabletop and making them feel like those characters. Johnny is badass. He is going to walk around and pop caps and people,
Right.
but and Wolf is going to basically introduce the happy stick.
Right.
But game wise, it's like, well, if they start getting enough guys piling into them, then it's not so funny. And so you still have that element of a fun game as well as being able to recreate the stories. So and Andy did a great job, I think, just with the basic mechanics, but also I think we had. For me, one of the main things was it's like the armory and the chicanery cards, like
Right.
a different way of dealing with the cool narrative stuff. Like the narrative is in there, like, oh, I've got the multi cartridge Webley, and I've got time bombs and I've got cool stuff, but they're not just stats on an army list. They're cool, game changing story effects, or backstabbing somebody or doing all that kind of cool stuff. So and I think that really adds to the games, those cards, because it's not just picking stuff from the army list at the start and going, oh, it's just a piece of war gear. It's actually, no, it's an event. It's a thing that adds to the story of the game that you're going to chat about in the bar afterwards. And yeah, cool. That time you just threw down the time drag just at the right moment, as opposed to it just being like a talk about the meta game and the crunch and the army list and all that kind of stuff, which has its place, but that was not the game we were designing.
Right.
There's still elements of that, but story on the tabletop. If you're pulling from a place that's all about cool characters, cool stories, that's what you want to focus on.
And you know what? Also, too, in Strontium Dog, when you can make your own mutant, what's great is that if you're a war gamer or you're a player, I have tons and tons of models that, or let's say singular models that are just acquired throughout the years, whether in a grab bag or you just acquire them. And I remember like there was one guy I made a mutant out of. He was just a cool model. I don't know where it was from. I don't know what company it was, but I made him like an electric mutant, and he was Rocky Tesla because his body was. I made him a rock body, but he had electric electric powers and stuff. And in the mutants,
Yeah.
you could do that. And I was like, oh man, you know what? And then I started to kind of make a whole faction of just mutants of leftover parts. So that was so kind of it was such like an inventive original idea that I just loved that. And I was like, oh man. And then we were putting um Dread and the Strontium together, and I gotta tell you, Johnny was a little too powerful for Judge Dredd. I mean, he was with all his the different the time bombs and the, it's just, but
Yeah.
it was just so much fun. And I mean, it's really is a good game. Is there any focus or anything coming out in the future? I know the Block Wars came out. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's not, we're not working on anything at the moment, and uh, sort of like the focus for Warlord and for Andy and myself recently has been the remake of Conflict 47,
right.
and so um, further down the line they may come back to it. I don't know. So at the moment, or there may be some other people working on, like say, they got in some other people to do Block War, Matt's Brain, I think. Um, so I don't know the status of that basically. I mean, we're not, Andy and I aren't working on anything for 2018 license at the moment. Our focus has been getting some coolness into Conflict 47 and things. But it'd be cool. I mean, we did have some ideas for stuff we'd still like to do. There are still great. There's cool stuff you could do with Dread still. There's some great stuff you could still, it's like there's other titles, 2018 titles that could have the treatment, I think. And it may be, even just having done several games, having done Slain and ABC Warriors and things as well. There's bits we've learned along the way about how just to, it might be worth even just doing like a second edition of one of the earlier books and just tightening up a few things. Not really changing it, but just, oh, right, okay, we've learned that lesson actually, 5 years down the line, go, cool, we could go back and tweak that. But, although to be fair, I think Strontium Dog is probably still the purest version of that game, because it's the first one, and we, Slain and ABC Warriors, basically ABC Warriors is essentially the same game but with droids, and they're a lot tougher and a lot bigger than Mecha. So again, it's almost like Dread. So obviously Slain is a bit different, but Dread, ABC Warriors, and Strontium Dog are kind of the same game in 3 parts, and with Block War now as well, adding different bits in. So being able to, like you say, pit like Dread or Johnny Alpha up against Hammerstein or something like that. But that said, the mechs are really nasty. They've got high stats. They're really kick ass, which is fine if they're knocking 7 stages shit out of each other. But suddenly, when you put like I forgot what they're called now, squishies or whatever. I don't know what they call humans. You can have them in there, but they're very vulnerable if they're not careful.
Yeah,
these are, this is like, it's like getting in a fight with a semi. It's like,
right.
I guess which one's going to win.
Yeah.
This one is like weighs 5 tons and is made out of metal, and there's you.
Right. Yeah. The block games can't hang with those guys. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but it's still the same points cost. So you'd have one, or you wouldn't want to push it too far, but they are worked off the same points formula, really.
Right.
But they're very attritional, is the way they work. It's much more based on the scenarios, really. Especially the big mechs, like you don't take out particularly. You'd really have to focus on them to take out someone like Hammerstein.
Right.
Some of the smaller ones, not so much, but Rojaws, if you can catch him, is funny. But Rojaws is just like he's one of those that just goes around and annoys everybody basically, and it's like it's good fun because you've got all these other robots just trying to blow each other up, and he's just like essentially insulting their mothers and chasing them around.
That's why the game is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Still space for those things, and I think another element of it was the part that I was focused on as well, which was the campaign play and trying to get some different types of campaign games in there. So, with Strontium Dog, it's all about just trying to make that retirement fund. It's like, I just want to make 1 million credits and retire, and be safe. But there's always, it's like getting hurt is expensive, and having to buy gear is expensive, hiring hired help expensive, and suddenly, Johnny was all the number of jobs he did, and he still never, had any money,
right?
Because he's always like, either saying don't worry about it or donating to orphanages, or because he couldn't help himself but being a good guy, even though he's a stone cold mercenary at the same time. But so and that's the idea behind the that campaign of like you're literally spending your victory points. You just have to like, oh, if you're going to keep going, but whereas something like Dread, like say, it's much more traditional kind of gang, leveling up who's going to be top dog in the area. Slain, it's very different. You take the role basically of a settlement, and you decide. You don't just have the same warriors. You essentially pick your force every time you play, and it was like so. One game you might have Slain and Ukko and some other people. Another you might decide you're going to go with one of the other kings and stuff like that. But basically, you decide whether you're going to go with the Dream Lords or you're going to go with the Earth Goddess, and the kind of like the mystic, magical landscape is a big part of it. And then for ABC Warriors, it's all about because the focus of it and a lot of the design was around the Volgan War run, basically, which was written by Pat Mills, was drawn by, I can't remember his name now, it'll come back to me, but there's a whole run based in Meccana on Mars, and it's like the return of like it's basically like the Volgan equivalent of the ABC Warriors, like the evil Magnificent Seven, basically. And so that was really cool because there's some really good, because ABC Warriors didn't really have a lot of long-standing villains in the same way that Dread and particularly Strongly Dog had, like Bubba and people like that. But ABC Warriors not so much. It's quite often like enemy of the week. But the Volgan War was quite good. And he had various recurring characters and a bit of a theme for us to have at least two different sides. So that was cool. But that's all about propaganda, and Pat Mills' story is all about kind of subverting social media culture and things like that. And so the victory points in the ABC Warriors, it's likes. You're competing for likes, essentially, and trying to attract eyeballs onto your cause, and do kind of like either for the system or rebelling or all that kind of stuff. So that was quite fun, and particularly like I say, because the mechs are very hard, but as they get battered, they tend to pick up what we call psychoses and glitches. So they, the ABC Warriors, none of them are right. They've all been around the block, been remade far too many times.
So as we speak right now, on my Mars 5, I am printing a rake page pose 1, pose A. So he's printing right now. Is it rake or rake? I don't know. It's
rake. So it's a bit of a made-up word. I think it was something Dan Morrison just wrote on the original sketch, and I don't know if he misspelled rake or because it was kind of slightly rakish. I don't know. But raki, we just liked it as a sound, as a word, and so that just stuck. I don't think it means anything, but it was cool.
It's got a kind of Japanese feel to it. So I like that too. But yeah, so let's talk obviously Xenogenesis funded on GameFound. I was happy to say that I was one of the first ones to jump on it because I was waiting. And I couldn't wait for it. And so I got to say, between the models I'm printing up now, they're coming out really good. The rules, but also going by, like we were just talking, Strontium and also the Dread rule books. We haven't gotten the rule book yet. I know we're at 0.08 we're using. I think 0.09 is going to come out soon. The rule book with the pictures and the way it's set up and everything, you guys pulled out all the stops. Everything looks fantastic. And I will say, just looking at it, like the pictures, the artistry, I really like the AI who takes you through like a small mission that tells you, all right, we're gonna run and gun, so you're gonna move here, shoot, and it's like almost like when you do a video game and they teach you like, oh, this is how to use a sword, this is how to use the gun, this is how you move.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much that idea of obviously all the experience Andy and I have had over the years in terms of doing starter sets for Warhammer and things like that, but also Danny bringing his experience from video games over, and again bringing people on board with games like Fortnite or League of Legends, all that kind of stuff, and particularly because there are some things that are a bit different with Xenogenesis. They aren't typical I go, you go, and things like that. We wanted to make sure that people, we understood and we explained it, and one of the great things about teaching people games in the modern era is there's guys like you who do like, they can do battle reports, they can do getting started videos and things like that, but you can't put that into a book. So, as close as we could with the calibration trials, with the and when we've got the Saber Ridge booklet itself, we wanted to get as close to that experience as we could in a printed page of like, yeah, get the miniatures out. It's one of those things that doing a demo at Adepticon is you can explain something in like 30 seconds, but in a rule book takes 4 pages. It's like
Right.
and again with the examples and showing people the gameplay, not just what the rules are, but actually what that means in the game. So the calibration trials, just taking a moment to check, go and say, well, these are the rules that are introduced, but get a model out and move through and let's see what it looks like on the tabletop as a miniature game was one of those things that I'm not sure whether it came from Andy or Danny, but was like it was just we wrote, between us, like I say, we've written a few getting started leaflets from box sets and things like that, and we've done the same for the Warlord ones, and breaking that down like that. Here's some interesting scenarios, and here's how to writing a rule set is one thing, but presenting it is a completely different skill.
Right.
Than just difference between design and development, and we've got a good mix on the team. But also, like I say, the layout and the visual presentation, and just trying to use all of the tricks that everybody has built up for the team. Andy and I've got like 60 years experience between us. Danny's been in various industries or different industries since the 90s. A lot of the layout was by Hal, who works at Green Ronin role-playing games, but again has been in the industry for decades, laying out books and running on the role-playing side of it. So a lot of experience going into those pages, and also having the time to do it. That's the other thing. Like most of the time, you don't. You have quite short deadlines to turn stuff around. You don't have necessarily the time or the funds to do everything you want to, so you end up making compromises. But I think we've been in a place, and particularly because it's basically been open development, it's been on the Discord, people have been able to download and play with the rules. Not only obviously that gives us feedback, but actually that's like those slightly softer skill set that sort of like, are people understanding what's going on? Where are the misinterpretations coming from? What are the people talking about on the Discord that they've not got right, or they really enjoy, or finding, as well as just kind of like balance issues, is really useful. So being able to then, we've gone from like, I think 90, it's going to be like a 96 page book. It's like a 140 page book or something. We're like, actually, we need to put more in. We're going to have more room for the scenarios. We're going to have more room for this. We're making some last minute decisions about what's going to go in the final book with the solo and campaign rules, because they've just not been in development as long. So we're kind of having a look at those. But yeah, everything it's like it's very much, but you only get to launch a book once now, and particularly in this world of sort of like downloadable content and patching stuff and things like that. Go, well, actually, where we come from a background like print and be damned, it's like it's in print. You want it to be as good as you can at that moment, because particularly with again, something like a codex of rulebooks, I wait another 4, maybe 8, 10 years before you get a chance to do that again. So as much as there is an online version, and there will be a web service app that does a lot of the rules and the force list and things. That book is going to be, we want it to be something we're really proud of, and we've had the time to do that. I think both internally, but also having lots of eyeballs on it from the public as well.
Right. Now, let's say traditional war game. Let's say like Warhammer or 40K or just games in general. It's usually like movement. I'll shoot or melee. I roll 10 dice. I hit 3 times. You roll 3 dice, and that's it. And then I get 2 wounds, and that's the way it is. What makes I would say Zeo kind of unique in the fact that, all right, I'm rolling 12 dice and you're rolling, your defense dice, and I get, like, say, for lack of a better word, 6 hits, but I only get one wound on you, one defense down. So it's like there's this barrage of stuff coming at you, and I think that's so different because it's like, all right, well I have 10 wounds now, I'm down to 4 wounds. No, we have there's 3 wounds, and then my defense down, I can kill you, and only one bullet. Let's say one. And totally other games, and it's like I want to say unique a bunch of times, but it's very unique in the sense that like he has 2 wounds, but you just get hit 40 times, right? But you have only one wound, one defense down. I think that's kind of it's like crazy and very cool.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, so it wasn't like that originally. Originally, it was as you say, every hit that went through was a defense down. Um, but the but, but particularly when you're getting very high strength weapons, um, things like the King Lance and stuff, where chances of blocking, it's not necessarily getting a lot of hits, but the chance of getting blocking the shots is quite narrow. Or something that's rolling loads of dice. So the mid weapons are okay, but the extremes, because D10s can be very flippy,
mm-hmm.
you just need a good roll, and suddenly you're getting 4 or 5 hits in one go. And so, or on the flip side, the armor rolls again, just get very lucky, and only one hit's going through. So it was, we were getting situations where a Zeo was getting taken, a Stormer could get taken out in one shot quite a lot of the time, or nothing happened.
Right.
Because the flip side, the other end of the bell curve, was there for the armor rolls or whatever. So, and it made it very hard to kind of balance having some really powerful weapons with once again, it's powerful and it's going to kill you. And we wanted to make sure that people who spent all their time and money and effort collecting the model, these nice big models, and they put it together and they painted it, and then it's like, well, you want it to be more than 5 minutes on the tabletop.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and it sort of occurred to me, we were just in the game, and it occurred to me, we have a similar thing. We actually have a similar mechanic, not quite as extreme, in the Strontium Dog games. Actually, there's an injury, essentially an injury tag. We do 1, 2, or 3
Right.
hits or wounds, and it caps out at 3. And so originally I was thinking we'd do something similar, but it just made sense. Actually, it's the number of hits, just how powerful the hit is, but it's only ever going to do one defense. And
Right.
suddenly it clicked, it worked. It just, they say, because those extremes didn't matter so much, because whether one hit got through, you rolled lots of dice of high strength, it's got more chance of something going through, but it's not going to do more damage necessarily. And then especially once that's mitigated slightly with, because the combat effects dice can do extra hits and things, so you can still do quite a lot of damage. But and particularly again, if you get things like system down building up and turning into defense down stuff, you can still do 2, 3, sometimes even 4 damage on one hit, but it's not the same as just my gun's really big and it's just going to take you out in one turn.
Right. Right.
Because we didn't want that alpha strike. We didn't want that. I didn't actually get to spend any time with my lovely toy soldiers on the table.
Right.
And I see everything flowed from that. It was one of those moments of just of on the wide tabletop. Playing the game is just so important. You can only design so much on paper, but playing the game again, no, this isn't quite working, and just having that idea, and actually, like I say, it wasn't even that original. We were just like, oh, actually, we have a slightly different mechanic in Strontium Dog. Why don't we use something like that? Suddenly made it work. And I think, yes, it's one of those that allows things. It also allows us to really differentiate between the Zeos and the supports, because again, Zeos can take quite a lot of damage and they can have bits blown off them and all that kind of cool stuff, whereas supports might generally evaporate. If you get a decent sized gun hit them, then they're gone, because they can, they've only usually have 1 or 2 defenses at most. So, and then combine that, particularly because Zeos, you've got the sort of like multiple actions and the reactions and things like that. So actually, being able to have powerful weapons, which can hurt if they hit you, but they aren't going to blow you away. But also, once you start taking damage, you really don't want to. It's like, oh, actually, I'd want to dodge out of the way of this one because it could actually. I've already got. I'm only down to my last 2 defenses. I don't want to take a hit from that King Lance. I'm going to use an impetus to dodge out of the way, and just that kind of stuff really, really feeds into a different dynamic on the tabletop. Rather than I've got 20 guys, I'm going to lose 3 guys. Great, it's not quite the same. You've got 3 or 4 Zeos probably at most, and a bunch of smaller guys. So we wanted each one to feel special.
Right. Yeah, and where did the concept come from? Like there is the the charge or the melee or the run and gun and stuff. It's basically like everybody goes with their activation, but there's three things you can do. Um, that's so unique. Like I like the melee where if I'm in combat or I can move into combat, I can actually attack you twice because I can sacrifice a move. But if I'm in close range, and it gives you this crunchy tactical focus of you know getting into combat, and also the reaction is that's a pain in the ass because when the guy's in range and he has a activation, he just moves around that corner. And now it's like, oh man, I can't even shoot him. Um, it's when you're on the receiving end, it's not good, but when you're the one moving out of the way, it's like fantastic. So, but also then you burn an activation. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's non-traditional. I like it. And it took a little bit to get my head around it because you're so used to the mold of a miniature game. But you know,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like Andy says, even with games with sort of like actions or action points and stuff, normally it's a move and shoot, or
mm,
maybe you'll get a double move, or whereas actually, yeah, this is essentially a three action
mm,
system for a lot of it. Like if we take a standard like run and gun as your standard activation of like two moves and a shoot, and deciding when and where you're going to do it, and it was very much again going back to that. What's the narrative on the tabletop? Like, well, if this was a cool anime program we were watching, what would those suits be doing? And they'd be jumping off buildings and get behind each other and blasting and missile spam and all the cool stuff. And that's what we wanted to put on the table. And that meant that they had to do quite a bit during an activation. So it didn't become little. Things had to go quite far, and like I said, particularly with the charges of like shooting and running into combat and fighting, is very effective. But it's also a big commitment. Terms of like, well, I'm getting stuck in now, and hopefully I'm going to win. Um,
right,
but yeah, it came down. It comes down to that image of how much one of these suits can do, um, and just that small difference of being, and it covers a lot of stuff in like just being able to move out, shoot, and move back into cover. It's just doesn't need any special rules. It's inherent, or being able to move quickly and get, like I say, get in on an arc on somebody or above them, and shoot down, or the opposite, shoot down and then get out of there.
right,
All of these become viable tactics just from having three actions rather than two. You've got the ability to move quite far and attack if you want to, or split the difference. And then once you get into like just the aim or the charge, and the fight thing again, it's I think particularly one of the things is once you get into melee, you want stuff to resolve fairly quickly because miniatures tend to stick. We had a long conversation about whether we're going to have sticky close combat, whether models have to stay engaged and things like that. And in theory, you don't. It's like you can dodge out of the way. You can, we had different rules originally about being able to break away if you were bigger than the person who's fighting and stuff, so you wouldn't have like a little drone stick to a massive walker. And it was just like, it doesn't matter actually. The game solved the game really matter. Once you're there, back up, it's like I've seen many like
right,
blasting away. So this isn't a game of clashing regiments where it becomes a big scrum.
right.
So and again, it kept it dynamic. And once you throw the objectives in there, again, making people to be moving around to engaging in different parts of the battlefield. It's not like I said, what we would have failed if we had a line up and shoot game. That was the one thing this was not going to be.
Right.
Was the cool, I'm going to get into position and then we're going to trade fire. It's like, no, we're going to be trying to get around past each other. We're going to try and claim objectives. We're going to try and break off the table. We're going to make it all very dynamic and quick because again, there's very limited time in most of the scenarios. You have maybe one or two regroups, which again, not having that traditional turn-based structure, gives there's quite a lot of discussion on the Discord about different builds for fast regroups or slow regroups, and or how much you're going to get on your impetus, so that and your cohesion and that whole layer of there's a real like tactics to the game as well as it being fun. And I'm much more in the fun. Hey, let's just blast stuff. Other people are much smarter at playing games than me, but they seem to be really enjoying that finessing of like, oh, actually, yeah, this is going to be it's like that build is going to be a certain type of Zeo Force, and it's going to be geared towards, or I'm going to, actually I'm going to try and just do damage and then get to a quick regroup and end the game and that kind of thing. And whereas somebody else is like, no, I'm going to do more of a, mine's going to be a large cohesion sink. And we're just going to take the shots and grind you down, and then we're going to win the game after the second,
right,
after the first regroup. And that kind of, it's reassuring, I suppose, that the game allows all of these kind of approaches out of just a few models, really.
right. Well, and what was the like? You guys could have got together and say did a 40K replica. Let's get 80 models on the table. We'll just go clash. And then you said, all right, well, we'll decide to do a skirmish game. What was the I don't know, like the creative process? Like, let's make a skirmish game, not a big like a war game per se. What was the
yeah? So this is all on Danny Block, who is Best Hobby. So as I say, this was his vision that he had back in the 90s. In the 90s, he'd worked at White Wolf and various role-playing games and things, and was sort of like leaving that. And at that time, he had a bit of money, and he really wanted to make a miniatures game, and he didn't want to make a big war game because Warhammer and 40K, and there's a whole bunch of 40K clones.
Right.
Clones is probably a bit unfair, but that's 40K second edition had ripples of like lots of other sort of games with larger armies and things. Like games like Maelstrom Vor, I'm trying to remember what the Heartbreaking one was, but there were lots of versions of that kind of sci-fi,
right,
30 to 40 models games, and actually what Danny really focused on, because he's again, it's just gone through like the anime resurgence of the 90s of big robot suits and stuff. So that was what he wanted to make, and it's always referred to as jumbo shrimp, like not just a normal shrimp, but a jumbo shrimp. He wanted nice big models. That was the main thing. People liked dreadnoughts and they liked tanks and stuff. So his idea was to have a few big models, and then of course a privateer released War Machine, and he went, oh, all right, somebody's done that, and obviously a very different approach in terms of gameplay and things. But there wasn't the way to do stuff in plastics then. Like essentially you would be competing, in terms of the miniatures range, competing directly with what Privateer were just doing War Machine. So I went, okay, not now. And he went off and he got some other work and ended up in video games and things. And then, so now has moved on. He's made his money in video games and is very, very pleased with that. But so what he wanted to do was go back to Jumbo Shrimp and make that game,
right.
And make a game that was about big models fighting each other. Inspired by the anime shows from the 90s he loved, and Appleseed, and the manga he read at the same time. Because again, that's his influence. He's the same generation as us. He was another one of those who he literally would cross 2 railway tracks to get to the hobby store to buy 2000 AD.
Right.
Grew up on a trailer park and got a job in KFC or McDonald's or whatever, so he could buy some Citadel figures or that kind of thing.
Right.
And made good, as you say. And now he gets to make a game. That's the short end of it, really. But the game he wanted to make is the game he still wanted to make when he was like in his mid-20s. That got him excited. That's what he still wanted to do. So that's what we made. He was aware that he wasn't able to make that game himself in terms of write the rules, design the miniatures. So he's hired us in to try and make his dream come true for him.
Right.
While he got on with the difficult job of actually making a business. We've had the easy bit. We just made a game. He's had to create a whole business.
Right.
But yeah, so that was it. It's a miniature. And I think that's always the case with a miniatures game. It's a miniatures-led design process and a miniatures-led thought process of it's things on the tabletop. And his was cool, big, mechanized suits hitting each other and jumping around a lot. So.
Yeah,
which it's cool. I love that already as well.
No, that's awesome. You know what? It's hard because when we talk to Adepticon, we've both been into miniature games forever. It's hard what I see, like just interviewing people and always you always think like, well, I'd like to make a game and try this and that, and it seems like such a daunting task. But what I've seen is there are games I think there's 3 categories. Models that are awesome, but the rules suck. And then you have rules that are fantastic, but the models suck. And then you have the guys that put it together. And I think Zio's put it together with, like I was saying before, with even just the rule book, the artwork, the model. I'm printing the models now and I'm putting together like, oh, this is fantastic. Big chonky robots, the little guys here, the cyberpunkish, hard sci-fi. I will say that I'm Guard Corps all the way. I don't. I no pact over here. I'm a guard corps guy, especially that I can cancel out the combat dice. That's my favorite rule. Um, but yeah, putting it together, and then I mean, I know, Gav, I got to kiss your ass a little bit. That's just the way it is. But you and Andy getting together, that was like a smart move. Two veterans, icons, coming in. That was a good move. But like um, putting it together like that, it's really something. Now, the next question I wanted to ask you was, we when we play, like we really love Mantic's Dead Zone. That was really our forte for the channel for a long time, and you know we've been doing it for a long time. We really
Yeah.
like that game, and then another skirmish game like say Zio came along, which is totally different. So it's great because it's a skirmish game, but totally different. I have a 3D printer, and I have to say, hi, my name is Coach, and I have a 3D printing addiction. I have so much frickin' terrain in here that I might have to buy a new house. How important is the terrain in Zio? Because we've been playing a little bit, and I know that if you put three buildings down, the game's gonna suck because everything is there. Lines of fire there, straight melee is there. But when I used, say, the dead zone terrain, which is 3 by 3 cubes, and we put it on a grid, and we use it like that, and I had to get around and get over and get under and like really CQB battle. How is that like impacting that? Because I know like certain games, like the mass games, it's not so much. You got some, all right, two line of sight blocking, three difficult, but in this you need like almost like a congested. I mean, the way I see it,
Yeah.
congested things on top of each other. This guy's on the roof here, but if I just move around the corner, you can't see me. But now the other guy sees me from the other end, and like you said, now you could run and gun or you could aim fire, which I love to do. Um, no range and like that. How important is it when you were designing or getting into it, like the terrain aspect of it?
It was, yeah. I mean, it was important, I think, because from the outset, we knew that we wanted to make a product that was going to be a start set, but a core set that was going to be the complete thing. We weren't
Hmm.
quite sure how we were going to do the buildings, but we were going to have buildings in there. But
Right.
actually, you know, we knew from like just a gaming perspective that yeah, what you want is a battlefield that creates challenges and opportunities, and who exploits them or creates them um, is the one that's going to get an edge. And we certainly um, from games like Necromunda and knowing that having that kind of three-dimensional game
Hmm.
adds a lot to gameplay, especially when you're on a small table. When you've got a 3 by 3 table, or maybe going up to a 4 by 4, then actually adding height to it just adds a lot of opportunities for cool stuff to happen and for things to fall off things and jump off things. And
Right.
that was the other thing. So that actually, again, you go back to the source material and that kind of dynamic. It is like leaping from rooftop to rooftop and jumping down on things or getting above it. Like I say, the urban combat of getting above and shooting down. There's always something.
Right.
There's a spider tanks walking along the road and there's guys at the windows firing down on it or
Right.
whatever
Right.
it might be. And so that had to be recreated in the miniatures version, really. And so, yeah, I mean, fairly early on, we were just playing with bits of terrain that we had, and we were lucky enough that I backed the original Kickstarter for I'm going to forget the name now again. Um, Boxes up there. Sorry, so the cardboard terrain we've got in
Hmm.
the set is based on the terrain that I just happened to have um, that we started playtesting on, and it turned out to be just perfect because yeah, it's good at blocking line of sight. It's essentially a bunch of rectangles and cubes,
Right.
which is mainly what you want as a starting point, just so stuff can get on top of it but not through it. Uh, and uh, and once we had that, because the system of these buildings were like quite small, medium, and large ones was quite regulated anyway. It was fairly straightforward for Andy to design like a terrain placement system And actually, we wanted, so going back to that sort of complete product, complete package sort of idea, we wanted people to be able to, turn up at a store, particularly because a lot of that's where it's one of those things that the sort of like the evolution of gaming, and particularly sort of like somewhere like Warhammer, evolved from, well, friends meet at their house and one of them can set up the terrain. It's all very gentlemanly and stuff. But these days, clubs and stores are such a larger part of people's gaming. Not everyone has. Most people don't have the space for a lot of gaming at home and things, so they're going to go to the local store. There's lots of great venues and stuff. So that idea that actually we'll have a system in place that you turn up, all you have is your miniatures. You go, well, I've collected my miniatures, and we've agreed we're going to play a 125-point game. We turn up. I've turned up with my miniatures. We've got some terrain, but from that point on, the game takes over. We're not. We're actually going, this is the system for setting up terrain. And you do it like this. You've classified your terrain into sizes. Okay, I'm going to spend a point and put this down. And using that grid system, and in a way, it almost replicates that general choosing his battlefield of like, well, I'm going to try and spread things out a bit at this stage, rather than sort of like trying to tone down the gamification of placing terrain. No, go for it. This is where it's like, well, I've decided to engage somewhere where it's got very close lines of fire because I'm going to get into melee. The other, the opponent's like, no, I'm going to put this over here and I'm just going to block that and I'm going to use that as a fire base. But of course, at that point, you don't know quite what your scenario is, exactly where the objective is going to be. So it's still only on, right? You're still working on. You don't even know which is going to be your deployment zone. So you're trying to create a battlefield that you can exploit, or it's going to cause, give you opportunities. But you're very limited. It's not like you have an absolute control over that, and that was fun. And so, and it stops a lot of, because we, it's like, well, the game starts here. You don't have to feel bad about doing some of that stuff. Like, no, I'm gonna place 5 small buildings across this and block you, because that's what I'm allowed to do. The game says that's fine, because it's balanced in there. And then you roll your scenario and you keep going. But it also meant that we could, by doing that, we were fairly clear about what the density of terrain should be. Because if people go through that system, they're either going to have a few larger buildings blocking stuff, or they're going to have more small buildings. But essentially, the density of the terrain, as long as nobody just decides to put it all to the sides. But again, it requires both of you to do that. It's like, okay, we're going to create an arena. 4 zeros enter, 1 0 leaves. Fine, we'll do that. But actually, which was, and it was always a constant struggle with something like 40k of. Trying to emphasize, it's like, because one of the big complaints was always like, this army is particularly powerful. It's like, because you're not using enough terrain. This one, it's like, well, have you tried putting more terrain on? It was always the thing. With something like Warhammer, obviously, it wasn't quite so bad. But even then, you still want 1 or 2 interesting features. So yeah, it's like, this is the number of buildings you want, and and then if you want to scatter on some aesthetic stuff, some cool barrels and bits and pieces, that's make it look nice, because of course it is an aesthetic game as well. Then that's cool. But we're not going to penalise you making it look pretty after the fact. So, it was. That was important. Again, part of that. And it's so difficult because everyone's terrain collection, like I say, it's very different. They could be printing out stuff. They could have a volcano. It's like, how do I use my volcano? I don't know. It's very large. It's going to fill up a table quarter.
Or maybe lava pits instead of volcanoes, or
Yeah. Well, that was one of the other things. We've gone for a fairly standard frontiery, sort of like I say, slightly cyberpunk, slightly. It's a bit of like a industrial sort of feel, sci-fi industrials of like power generators and things like that. But actually, the 100 Suns is like asteroids and weird moons and forest planets and all the other cool sci-fi stuff people could. And one of the things with the art, like you say, we're very, very keen to try and get the art to represent stuff that the miniatures, the terrain doesn't look like. Okay, well, this is the first port of call. This is a core set, and it looks kind of like this, but there's loads of different aesthetics, and there's 100 star systems to choose from. Some of them are like Hive Cities or Coruscant or whatever, and they're just going to be these urban, metropolises, and others are just going to be dust bowls, and others are going to be, weird lava, or ice flows or cool stuff, which is one of the things I'm looking forward to as the game and the community sort of like develops, of seeing the cool shit people come up with, because that's
Right.
we can only do so much, and then you see people inspired and take it further, and you're like, oh wow, that's so cool. That looks really good.
Well, I'll tell you, because I was, when right from Adepticon, I backed a Kickstarter, um, and it was kind of a cyberpunky. It had like a Blade Runner Japanese feel to it and stuff, and he had all this stuff in it, and on my FDM printer. So before you guys did the game found, I was printing this stuff up, and I'm like, okay, this will be cool to put in here, but I'm gonna put like purples and reds, like not traditional colors to make it like that.
Yeah,
But then I started thinking, um, you know, we have 100 worlds, so there's got to be a Hoth, there's got to be an Endor, there's got to be a Tatooine, there's got to be and we have a lot of that stuff from other games. So now just plugging it into that, so it's like it doesn't have to be in the cyber, like
no,
as advertised. It could be it could be on the ice planet, or it could be on uh some kind of forest, or an
yeah,
asteroid. I didn't even think of the asteroid, but that would be badass. Like maybe a frozen asteroid with um um, my brain don't work sometimes. Like different outcroppings and stuff and things like
yeah,
that, and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
atmospheric conditions and things like that.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, and that was one of the things, again, taking the experience of 40k, and the point of a large thing about 40k and being a million worlds and the whole galaxy stuff is being very permissive. It's like all of these worlds exist, and the reality is, like, as a new game, it's like, I mean, it's like you say, a lot of people are going to this is not going to be people's first game. They're going to have an existing terrain collection. A
right,
lot of it may be ruined Gothic buildings, um,
right,
whatever. And so it has to work with those. There is terrain in the core set, but people might be just printing. They might just be digital. They say just 3D printing their models, and they'll just be downloading them all. But so the rules and that system and the aesthetic had to work with whatever people have got as well. And we couldn't say, and I think that's the problem with some settings of, like, they are like, well, it's in this place, and this place looks like this. If it
right,
doesn't look like this, then it can't be in our setting. Whereas it's like the trick of 40k was like, no, it grabbed from everywhere and went, yeah, you want a cowboy Wild West town? Cool, there is one in the middle of nowhere. They
right,
got
right,
las pistols, yeah, and whatever else. And we're the same. We're utterly shameless about it. Of like, yeah, there's 100-star systems of multiple worlds and moons and colonies, and some of them are very high tech, and some of them are more going to be, Firefly style, Wild West in space, and so what. As long as there's some big robot suits, you know, bouncing around and shooting each other in it, it's still part of Zero Genesis.
right,
And as part of that as well, um, you know, was the idea of the structures. So again, these other parts of your force that aren't normal models, but things like the resource collectors and like data nodes and that kind of stuff. Because Danny had this vision of these sets are, little complete game set. So there are Zeos, there's some ports, and there's some bits of terrain. Now we can't put a massive building in every set, but actually having a cool little antenna dish thing, or having a gun turret, or having like a resource collector, also meant that even if you're still playing on your Gothic ruins or your whatever terrain, you've still got bits of the
right,
100 Suns universe on your terrain. You brought it with you. It's like that little thing over there, which you've put on top of that building, makes it part of our universe
right,
now, in a way. So, which is really cool, and also, it's just fun as another element of the game, and using the structures and part of the tactics and stuff. But actually, one of the main reasons is just that, yeah, it becomes that complete package of, I've already got a terrain set. I'm not going to go out and spend $100 on new terrain for this new game, because I'm already spending $100 on new miniatures or
right,
whatever it might be. So the expectation of a new game, a new system, to you know for people to spend large amounts of money, is you have to temper your expectations and
right,
build that up. And so um, it's like, again, you can download a rule book, you can get the miniatures 3D printed, or and if you want to, because the main thing was to get people playing and get people
right,
build that community, because it's not about making a quick buck. It's about making a game people will play.
right,
And
right,
again, it's uh, it will need to make money, that's a commercial reality,
Mhm.
but it can do that over the longer term. There isn't the benefits of working for a patron who is self-funding to a certain point. You put money into the business, is that there isn't somebody going, oh right, actually, well, where's our return?
Right.
We've had 3 years, 4 years of R&D on this. We've had a year of open development. Like we can do it right. Don't have to just do it quick, and we don't just have to do it. And even once it's out and there isn't like, well, okay, well, it's first quarter now. Where's the money? But number needs to go up. It's like
Right.
It's not that. It's like, because that's not how you build a community. That's not how you develop a game. The best things take time. So you have something, you put it in front of people, enjoy it, and then you build on that. You don't there's a few too many really good projects, I think, get sunk a bit because it's other people's money, and
Right.
you need money to do this kind of stuff. So people have an expectation, but there's also an unrealistic expectation about how quick that money will come back
Right.
from something like which essentially is still like in many regards still quite a cottage industry, despite somebody everyone looks at GW and thinks, oh yeah, look, they're making billions, and you're like, yeah, they are.
Right.
Even
Right.
the most successful companies underneath them are so far down in
Right.
terms of the money. It's like AI. It's like, hey, Microsoft make loads of money. I can make an app.
Right.
It's just not comparable.
Right.
So they've been around for nearly 50 years doing this now.
Right. It's you guys are playing chess, not checkers. We want to make something that's going to be around for a while, something quality, not just
Yeah, exactly.
the
And that,
flash.
and that means making the right decisions now about how to do that. Like I say, and creating a solid foundation, which,
Mhm.
like I say, with a rule book, for instance, that in 2 years' time on the shelf when we see it, we're not going to go. We're going to
Right.
take that off and try and do it again as quick as we can, because
Mhm.
yeah. So it's something we can all walk away. We'll continue, because again, there's more factions to come. There's ongoing development. There's still
Right.
there's fiction. I'm commissioning short stories at the moment from some
That
great writers.
that
So
was
finding
that
that
was my
kind of stuff is really fun.
next question, because I I I do like the miniature games. I like putting them on the table. I love the painting aspect. The printing aspect now is just the newer part of a hobby. It's almost like when I got an airbrush, how it changed the way I painted, and now with the advent of 3D printers, it's almost like, all right, well, now that you said asteroids, I'm already thinking of how many, what I'm going to print to make asteroids, recreate like an asteroid. Um, but what about the because I read rule books from cover to cover. People sometimes like I know at Adepticon we got the Age of Sigmar, and it's a beautiful book. You can't. GW puts together a beautiful product, but as I'm reading through it, the rule book is, say, 1/8 of pages, and the rest is all fluff. And also showing off models and painting and things like that. When are we gonna? When I mean, I don't know if you know anybody, Gav, who could write some books, but is there gonna be? Is that in the works? Like in the future, fleshing out this universe that you guys have created?
Yeah, well, so again, one of those sort of realities of modern publishing and things is that GW can get somebody to drop $70 on a hardback book,
Right.
yeah, which is mostly background and pictures of toy soldiers, which is lovely, and an artifact that I have various editions of lots of games like that and things like that. Uh, but for us, that again, that's too much of an ask. We think that, so again, the focus is on getting some toy soldiers and getting them on the tabletop. And if you're going to spend money, do that.
Right.
And so the rule book is really nice, like I say, and we've put background in there, and there's enough in there for people to understand the universe and what the different factions are, and lots of hopefully inspiring pictures and things. But the vast majority of what we're doing is online and digital. So we're
Mm-hmm.
using the website called World Anvil.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go onto World Anvil, it's a wiki basically. It's a create your own wiki. So it's essentially the Wikipedia of the Hundred Suns.
Okay.
And the great thing about that is, because I'm the same. I love reading background and stories and things like that, but we know not everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than like say, okay, to get the rules, you have to go through this $70, $80 rule book. So, well, you can get the rules for free, but for the people that really want to get into it, the law, the law aficionados and stuff, they love going through wikis, they love reading up articles and things like that. So we're going to create that now. And we've been doing the online comic. We've been doing the web comic. We've been doing like the travel logs, those kind of things. So we're building the universe bit by bit. Yeah, we didn't want to present 40 pages of lore that people had to read through. It's very much like, oh, you read a bit of this, oh, click on the link to find out that thing, and and then suddenly you're wiki surfing, and it's half an hour later, and you've read 3 articles, and it's like, oh, cool. We may do we might collate some of that into into more of a traditional book at some point. It's one of those things that we'll have to see. We want the community to lead in a lot of ways. So, for example, there are no physical force lists. There is no army books. There's no force lists in the rule book. It's all going to be digital. It's going to be via a web app. There's a PDF at the moment. There'll still be a PDF, so it's kind of laid out. But actually, the idea is people will be able to pick their forces on their phone, their tablet.
Okay.
Because again, it's a very responsive way of publishing, and also it's a very easy way to translate, because actually behind the scenes you can just create essentially a very fancy spreadsheet, and somebody else who wants it in German goes through and just changes all the cells into German, and it populates out into a German version of the force list. And so again, Danny, from his video games and very digital background, is really into that kind of stuff, and that's very modern. We also know people like paper. It's like there's still we've got there is a rule book, there is a nice and if there's demand, if we think there's generally people want to see a bind up of the comic. We want, one of the things we're going to be doing is lots of people really like all the concept work and the art and things like that. So doing an art book, doing a physical art book is a nice addition. And whether that's print or print on demand or stuff, again, we can work out. There are lots of ways to create and publish stuff these days, which doesn't necessarily mean finding a printer who's going to print out 30,000 of them and send them out. It's like there's different ways of getting that stuff into people's hands now, some of which are more responsive and more cost effective if you're not trying to shift 50,000 of them. So yeah, the deluxe rule book for hardback, cool collector's copy, I think is a thing. There's a possibility down the line that people will want that, in the same way that people might want the equivalent of a forces list book that's bound up and or an annual, or like a chronicles kind of compendium, where we go, okay, these are all the new rules, and there's campaign rules that we've released, and then here's 4 different scenarios that we've added over the years. But we're going to put here it is in the physical edition if you want to. But that's all going to, rather than us deciding in advance this is how it's going to be, we're just, we're in that position where just because somebody did something a certain way before doesn't mean that's the best way for us to do it, or that our players will want that, or the same with the way the boxes work on the shelf in the stores and all that kind of stuff. Again, Danny he co-owns like a comics and games store, so he has a mind to what the retailer's view is on a lot of this stuff. And again, turning up and saying, "Hi, yeah, we want half your store for our new range," and like, yeah, no, I'm going to get more Space Marines in. It's like, so those especially with something that's crowdfunded and stuff like that, reassure. It's like, no, there is a continuing growing market for these things. You haven't got all. It's like we haven't just sold it to everybody who wants it already. All those kinds of things that the modern retail, lots of the challenges they face in terms of new games and crowdfunding and all that kind of stuff. We're very aware of these things. It's and so trying to do it right, like I say, and not just right as in successful, but right by the people that are involved in those processes. We want recruitment happens in stores. We can do lots of cool stuff, but actually people seeing them and just seeing stuff at a club or a store being played is just the best way for somebody to go, oh, cool, what's that cool robot? Ah, well, you see it come over.
Right.
Just like being at Adepticon, being at Nova, that kind of stuff. You can't. Once word is out there, hopefully that word of mouth, that a friend playing it, somebody that's still playing it, is invaluable for recruitment. And so it's not just a commercial desire to get stuff into stores. You go, no, it's how you grow and how you survive.
Right.
Um, so
I will say that um, the Discord is very active. I have my phone off and it keeps just going off, and it's the Discord is active, and I'm very like it's incredible that this is a game that technically hasn't come out yet, but guys were doing demos and had like a makeshift tournament. I think it was Australia, New Zealand, or something.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh man, these guys are like, you know, whole hog on this. And I was like, I really like the game, and I'm just, like I just got it now. I'm printing, but they're already like, proxying guys and doing this and that. It goes to show that it's a good product. I'm saying a product as far as um, the emphasis that went into it, and what the end product being put out is that people really like it, and they're already playing it without even the miniatures. It's incredible, you know.
yeah, it's one of those I mean, like we love those guys, and guys like you as well who've been like early on, like showcasing the game. We like those community champions again. You can't manufacture enthusiasm. You can pay for it for a short amount of time, but it's not the same as guys like you or those guys, like running demos in Australia or going to their, setting up the games for their local clubs or their friends and stuff. Um, that's literally priceless.
Right.
Yeah, um, and also why we haven't done certain things. We haven't tried to do lots of community stuff in terms of our own videos or our own. We've done a few things. We've got some people with expertise involved to do some of our promo videos and stuff. But again, we're better off letting the community do community.
Right.
Companies that rather than spending lots of money on marketing in that very traditional sense, it's like, well, no, we'd rather get a whole bunch of one of the things we did was we sent out prints of the Stormers to some of the painters out there and just got them. It's like paint this and show it on your channel
Right.
if you like. No strings attached. Or mock-ups of the box itself and just what the contents might look like and things like that, so people can do the equivalent of an open box or a first play or whatever. And as we get forward to the actual launch and having the actual physical product, we can do that again. But and it's just more authentic. It's just more authentic if it comes
Right.
from within the community then. And none of us are experts at this. And we can do interviews, we can talk about stuff, but we're not. There's like as you know, there's so much effort that goes into just doing simple videos, doing battle reports.
Oh yeah.
We don't. There'd be a lot of time and money spent internally for something that somebody else can do better anyway.
Right.
As part of the community.
Well, I had a discussion with there's a few big guys. I know the thing with our channel is a little different than everybody else's. I'm interviewing you because I generally like what you've done. We met at Adepticon. I said, "Oh, this is a guy I can go down to the pub with," and then when we, maybe to our detriment, we'll play games on our channel that we actually like. There are guys out there like Flash in the Pan. You'll see that the bigger channels like, oh my God, this game is so good. And then next week it's like, you got to buy this game. And then the week after it's like the new hotness. Yeah. I can't do that. We just, well, I'm not independently wealthy, so I have to pick and choose what I like. But I was talking with one guy and he was like, I don't understand why these companies don't work with people who do videos or stuff like that, or have a set. Like we have a little studio. We have the printing, the painting. We have 4 fervent guys that play games here, and like you said, and also too. All right, you didn't send me. I mean, I got the free model at Adepticon, but I don't mind spending the money on, like I backed the Game Found. I printed the stuff. I'm gonna paint the stuff. I'm gonna say whatever the frick I want about it, whether I like it or don't like it, because I want to, be really genuine. But if we like it, we're gonna do it on the channel, and that's well, like you were saying. Why would you be bothered with? I rather honestly, all us and the YouTube community make the videos, make the painting, and you just guys keep churning out good stuff. That's like, I think that's like you said, it's paramount to it. So it's like, you're gonna write some background on this for this. Oh, but crap, I got to do a video today. It makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I
And I think there's something again. There's something genuine, like so. Like I said, what you do is you have a hobby, you enjoy doing these things, and then you're sharing it on your channel.
correct.
And and you're hoping to create something that people like, but not because you want the likes, but because you're a part of a community and you're sharing,
Right.
and they're going to be, and it's like bumping into somebody, like I say, and having a good, cool conversation in the pub. It's being out there,
Right.
and I think, for us on a slightly different level, but it's a very similar thing of like we enjoy anime, we enjoy toy soldiers. We've got this opportunity to create this thing that we want to share with people that will be, we're hoping will become commercial, that it will become a mainstay. That's the aspiration. Many
Right.
have tried and died.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and so there's also a big, there's a healthy dose of realism about on it, but we're doing everything we can to give it the best shot, um, to establish it within that sort of like framework of success over the long term. But what we're not doing is letting the tail wag the dog. We're not doing stuff. We're not creating the game or doing certain things just because it'll market easy or because it'll be easy
Right.
to do a certain thing. What we're doing is we're doing things, like I say, the right way, the way that over time will enable people to stock it in stores. Will hopefully, make it straightforward to do painting videos or to do, like you say, there's enough material there that people can do battle reports. But one of the things that we wanted to work on, which we haven't, for instance, was, um, can we make assets available to the community in terms of like, just having not necessarily marketing material, but it's like, oh well, if you want to have access to logos, to stuff to use in thumbnails, that kind of, there's ways you can help the community without
Right.
dictating to them what to do. So you just go, it's like having a press kit, it's the same kind of thing of like, cool, you want to feature Zero Genesis, cool, go to this page, download this files and stuff, and there'll be a bunch of graphics and cool stuff that you can use.
Yeah, that's
make
awesome.
it feel like Zero Genesis. You want to do a battle report, cool, print or video or whatever, great. Here's some of the graphics we've used on our pages that you can use to make it look good. Now, obviously, we had to finish up working out what our graphics look like and stuff like that before we could do that kind of thing. But stuff that, again, we could help service the community with that kind of stuff rather than just trying to do it ourselves or just abandon the community altogether and just go, well, you just do your thing. It helps just to say, well, it's very easy for us to put just create a Google Drive with some graphics on,
right,
and a Zero Genesis logo. That's much more straightforward than you guys trying to find some decent, resolution thing off a PDF or what. Do you know what I mean? It's just like there's a reality out there that we can help you with, and the rest of it we can't do for you.
right.
And we don't, we don't want to. We want people to be genuine about it, and because like I say, word of mouth these days, because everyone's clamoring for eyeballs, eyeballs and time.
Right. Right.
Some of us are fortunate enough, like say we have a bit more disposable income for our hobbies. It's the opposite of your teen years, as we said before. It's like no money, loads of time, no time, loads of not loads, but it's like, and so and for people, it's never been better in many ways. There's so many games, such a rich kind of choice of different types of games, from tabletop games and miniatures, digital, and all kinds of stuff. It's like it really is like it's weird because of course we always think golden age is old, but actually there's loads of amazing stuff. And like I think if I'd been 14 when I was 14 living today, it'd be insane. I think I'd just be in a coma of like indecision. So, but that is the problem as well. There's so much cool stuff. Where do you what do you bring to the table? What do you want to talk about on a channel? What do you actually put paint on rather than it just sitting as a file on a hard drive? What makes people make that choice, particularly when you want them to commit money? It's nice, but actually committing time is even nicer. So those community guys, I say it's so rewarding that they enjoy it so much that they want to take it and show it to other people and create that if you build it, they will come. Well, they want to build it. They want to play this game. They know
Right.
they have to build a community. We're not in Australia, so they know they're going to have to grassroots it there and then, and that's the best way to do it. So, and hopefully, it's one of those you can't like. On the Discord again, there's a channel for arranging games and things like that, and also people asking about whether we could be at various events, and it's like we can't be at that many events because there isn't that many of us, and most of us aren't actually on that side of the Atlantic either.
Right.
But actually, as we go forward, if there are ways we can get people to help them demo the game, if they want to set up a small tournament show, all that kind of stuff, again, help the community to do the stuff because there's lots more of you guys out there than there is us in here.
Right. Right.
And we need to mobilize and use you guys to carry it because there's only so much we can do
Yeah.
or should do.
Yes, I'd love to cover it on the channel. We're going to do it. I'm printing everything now. Unfortunately, it's football season, which is a time draw for me. But afterwards, I'm printing as much as I can. In my spare time is just painting. So I can't. I'm trying to get everything ready to go so that once the weather changes, I'll have all my Zeo models printed up, ready to paint. And I don't want to. We don't like to do dry runs with anything unpainted because it doesn't look good when in my opinion. We've done it before, but I don't like it. Everything painted models always, and they roll better too. So
Definitely.
but like someone was saying, maybe have a tournament at Adepticon next year. I was like, oh man, that'd be fantastic. So it seems like you guys are riding the wave. I think you did it right where it wasn't like you could have come out with it 2 years ago, but you took the time to let it marinate, the ideas come forth and try it and test it and stuff. And even now in the Discord, people are like, hey, I don't know about the damage down or whatever, and there's a lot of discussion, and it's I don't know, some of these guys, they're fantastic. I don't know if they work or they're millionaires that are just playing games, but I mean, like I'm at work and it's just constantly popping up, and I'm like, and I see the same names over and over again. I'm like, oh man, all right, they got some great ideas, but it's almost like I can't keep up with it. So I guess that's a good thing in that sense.
I think for that sort of like development cycle, that's cool. But I think it is important. So for me, like I like lots of different games. I like doing lots of different things. I only have so much attention for any particular thing. So if that thing changes too much or moves too fast, then I'll jump off.
Right.
If it's like, if the thing I bought 6 months ago is no longer valid now or has to be changed, it's like, because I'm not mono focused on a particular game or game system because I'm total butterfly when it comes to my hobby stuff. And I might come back to it and the rest of it. But what I don't want it to do is have to become a job of work. Keeping up with stuff, keeping up with new releases, keeping up with rules changes. Those are things I'm very aware of that we shouldn't get into. You can respond, and we've got, like I said, we've got an open, especially at this moment, we've got open development. So we are eliciting feedback and asking for opinions, which is right. But you've also got to look forward. We've got more factions to develop. We've got more rules to write. So at a certain point, we go, well, cool, these are nailed down. This isn't going to change anymore. The rule book is going to get printed at some point. It's going off the files are going off sometime in the next few weeks, and that the rules, barring correction, actual errata and stuff, are going to be set. For now, anyway. The force lists again. That's something else people can continue playing, and that's what printing different stuff. And as models come out, we can tweak points, values, and stats and things potentially. But actually, again, we don't want to spend too much time looking over your shoulder at what's been done. What you want to be doing is making sure the next thing is going to fit in, done to the best of your ability. That you're not half-assing what you're doing at the moment because you're too busy trying to fix the thing before. Because there is always something to fix, because the meta's always changing, because communities find different ways, and I think that's one of the. For me, it's like, particularly with online sort of like discourse, things like that as well. It's very easy to again forget that the basic experience is two people playing a game together. And sometimes that's just like you and a friend, and the rest of the meta doesn't matter. But actually, there's still this little arms race going on. Me and I used to play Epic all the time. And me and my mate would be like, "Aha, look, I've got a new guard," or whatever. Or he's changed the weapons on his Warlord Titan this week, or whatever. And say, we didn't have, we weren't on forums getting builds and stuff like that. But it'd be like, oh look, well, I've gone out and bought a new box of these guys have painted them up since last week. But that's just like exploded out to entire communities now. Of like everything's always changing. There's always a new cool. This is always the best build until the next one comes along, and then there's a counter to that, and I think, and it's cool because people are already into that. But also, if you're not careful as a developer, you end up getting caught in the chair. You end up keep chasing that and trying to change stuff to accommodate every single tweak of the community. Where you go, well, the community will self-right again. This is the hot thing this week, and then next week, clever people are going to find out how to stop that. Then the other clever people are going to stop it. That's how it works. That's how tournament play works. That's how the original Warhammer tournaments worked. Like, oh right, this is really big. Oh, and then the next tournament, like, well, they all ended up on the bottom tables because everyone's worked out the counter. The really good players were always the players, not the armies. They would work out. It's like, well, actually, I don't have to tweak too much of my army. I know how to counter this thing. All rounders would always still end up.
Right.
So, I think as a games development, it's it's important that you keep, that we don't get dragged into just responding to every single request. That you end up with like a design committee of thousands of players, each of which has got their own opinion. But at the same time, being open to genuine, like, this thing that's broken, like consistently for the last 6 months, this thing everyone's been saying, we need to address this. There's a different thing to actually, okay, somebody mentioned something on a forum this week, let's change it next week. That's just not the way to run a game system, really. Unless you've got an entire dedicated, like, again, video games, endless patches and stuff. That's cool. They have entire teams dedicated to tweaking the AK-47 in Call of Duty, or adding to the round, or changing the balloon on this kind of. That's cool because they can immediately download it and patch it, and everybody's the same. Tabletop miniatures games doesn't work like that. We can't download stuff into people's heads to change the, or necessarily update everybody's rulebook at the same time. And it's quite, you don't want people coming to like an event and then going, oh, well, my book says it fires 24 inches, and yours says it fires 23. Well, what's going on with that?
Right. So, and will there be? I know you touched on it before. Will there be something like an army builder? Because I love to sit down and just make lists. I have army builders, and just adding weapons and stuff. And also, it's nice where it's all in one place. It's like you don't have to do the PDF or an iPad or something where it's like, I have to double check. Is there going to be something like that?
Yeah, so that's the idea. Like I say, it'll be a web application basically that does that sort of thing. I'm the same actually, especially some of the games. Some games I like sitting down with a big book and writing out a list, but I play Depth of Titanicus, for instance. So, actually, I've got all the stuff on my iPad, and because the titles don't change very often, so it's just like, I'll pick that one, pick that one, pick that one.
Yeah.
And now I'm just going to pick a couple of stratagems and smooth it out. You don't want to have to go back to basics all the time. So yeah, very much so. The digital force list, kind of the exact format of it, is something we're still working through, and that's one of those. It's as much about how that gets presented on the front end. The actual mechanics of it is pretty straightforward, but actually having that fully interactive web app where, because you can, you've got that entry, but if you're like, well, actually, I can't remember what that rule is, and being able to click on it and it takes you through to that page.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Or the skill or the whatever. So, but also collate that in such a way that you can just output it as a simple army list. Because again, that's the other thing. You don't want to have to use necessarily like, this entire. It still becomes a digital equivalent of having to flip through the entire book if you're not careful. Where you're like, no, I just want a breakdown of my force in the list because I remember what the skills did. I remember what the components did, but I want it on one page. So the physical presentation, digital presentation of that, like what stats are on the page, how we're going to make that look, is one of the things we're going through with the physical, with the PDF force list as well. Of like, well, what information do people need? How are we going to present that? If you've got a force of like several ZOs and supports, is that all on one page? Is it one thing? Do you like data cards? Is that kind of like, do we want equivalent of digital data cards, or do we want just to have more like an army list entry? All of that kind of stuff is now that we've almost got the rule book itself done, and the box set and the core set like pretty much good to go, and all the rest of it. That's kind of not necessarily particularly to do with me and Andy, but Danny in particular, we're rolling on to the delivery of that. We've had the guy who does all our world, a guy called Ram, who formats and kind of lays out all the well downfield stuff and sort of digital guru, as it were. She's started doing some of the early work on that and how we might look at some of that. And again, once you've done that as well, it's quite easy to populate it with translations and things like that, because it's just a front end
Right.
on a bunch of stuff. So, and also, we can tweak. Again, taking it, saying we can't tweak stuff, but actually that idea of like, well, if we do decide to tweak a rule or something and we explain something slightly differently, the good thing is that will then populate outwards into that web app, and so I think that's where that is useful, and again, Danny's from that Fortnite, from that service game type. Well, it's about that regularity. Friday will be the drop. Will be like, okay, the web app update will drop on Friday afternoon, and everyone knows it's there on Friday afternoon.
Right.
So go in, update your, or whatever the cadence happens to be. But it'll be some, again, it won't be I wonder when the next Q&A is coming out. I go, no, the updates, the Q&A, whatever, they come out every fortnight, boom, 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 or they come out every month or week or whatever it might be. And also new content. We've done the same. The travel log and the Sean Bears guide, they alternate every week. There's a webcomic every Friday, all that. So, and it's very much built into our plans for that. As when we release another faction, that's the other thing. There's not going to be necessarily another big physical book or box. So when we introduce another faction, it will basically just come through the web app. It'll be like, bing, here's your new force list, X faction, and it'll be there, and you can start playing with it. And as models get released for it, we're not quite sure whether we'll do the entire list first or it'll update with new release and stuff, because it might be easy just we don't know whether people will be more excited seeing stuff in the list they haven't got models for, or if that's just more annoying. It was like, we don't. And to be fair, the amount of people using proxies and stuff already, I suspect they'd just like to see the lists and then wait for the miniatures. I mean, it's going to be generally the window of release for a faction is going to be about 6 to 8 months anyway, so it's not going to be that long. People are waiting for stuff.
Right.
It's going to be 6 box sets probably for each one.
Okay.
So it's cool, and we've got 5 in total. Four and a bit factions planned for now. But also we can come back and we can add more Guardcore stuff. We can add more pack stuff in there. We can. One of the other things, again, embracing modern technology in publishing is that, cool, actually, we'll do this 3D print only variant. It might be cosmetic, or it might just, it's like, or actually, here's the narrative. We've moved away from Astrapelago, and we're going to follow this narrative here. And here's like some different security drones that get used by over in this place in 100 Suns. Right. And they're just going to be 3D print only, because even if people can't print at home, most people have access to a print service.
Right.
So so it's not necessarily the core of the game. That's still going to be available, but it's like just having cool stuff, bits of terrain or like say, or variants and things. You want some different heads? We got so many different heads.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. We don't want to put 20 million heads on a frame. It's just a waste of time, and space, because you can only ever use 2.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But actually, but digital, digital's infinite. And it's the same with the background. Again, we can add articles, we can add color schemes, we can talk about different battles, different battle zones, different areas of the 100 Suns, and we're not making a thicker and thicker and thicker book. That while at the same time we're also not expecting people to know all that information. It's not necessarily core.
Right.
So, leaning into the benefits of digital whilst remembering that this is essentially a physical hobby.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy that it's something that we play on the tabletop, but now it's going towards the digital era. So, but you know what? It's great because, like you said, you waited 5 years for your codex to update. You guys say, all right, the pact is getting killed, so we rearrange some rules. Here they are, now go. All right, well, I already made the investment. I have all my stuff. That's my main faction. Oh, there's some cool new stuff. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay, great. Oh, all right, this is much better. Instead of waiting, because what usually happens is you put that on the shelf, then the shelf becomes dusty, and then you start playing another game. So it makes
exactly.
I think that's like a living, breathing rule book is the way to go with that. And I agree 100% with that. Just doing updates.
And I think it's also just an opportunity then as well, like I say, to add stuff in, because again, you don't have one of the one of the things when we were at GW was always, it was a very kind of monolithic release schedule. It's a bit more mixed up now, but it was like, you had a codex release, and an army came out with its codex, and that was about it. And then we started doing a few. We did the summer events. We did like terror and stuff, and that allowed us to add some bits in and release stuff outside of the codex cycle. But it was still very much like massive, big drops over like 3 months codex or miniatures. But actually, having that ability to like actually, we've come up with a new tactical Zeo for Pact, and we can add it into list. Bing, and there it is, and the model's coming out in 2 weeks' time.
Right.
It's just there. You don't have to wait for getting off a physical print schedule gives you the ability to manage a system in ways that sometimes there's benefits to having big physical product, but actually in terms of lightness of touch and being able to we're not going to drop 6 kits at a time once we're established, but what we want to do is have that ability to just go back and fill in stuff and add some variants and do some cool new things, without having it to be a massive thing every time. It's just it's that equivalent of skins in Fortnite or whatever. What are this week's skins? Oh, cool! I like this one. It's that same thing of like, okay, here's a nice variant on the Raki. The weapon's still the same, but actually we're going to swap everything left to right, digital, and tweak it and make it work that way around. Oh, cool! Look, I've got a left-handed Raki rather than a right-handed one. Right. It's just. But actually, we've also made some other adjustments to it, or we've tweaked the pose, or we've done another cool thing. I mean, the one thing we generally don't really know yet, and it's always tricky, and it's always, and it was the same with Strutty Dog and things like that. Is there's a slightly grey area where you've got the game, you've got background, you've got painting and stuff, but collecting. How are people going to collect their arms? What are their collections going to look like? Not what a force is going to look like. It's one of those we're not quite sure. Are people going to have like 20 Zeos and pick out 3 for a game? Are they just going to pick 3 and just reuse them? That bit is just unknowable. We don't, it's like we don't really know how people are going to interact with a range of miniatures. Where do you buy one? Is everyone going to buy one of each? Are they going to buy multiples? Are they going to? Some people obviously will list build, and then that'll inform their decisions. Other people obviously just like, cool, I like this set, I'm going to print this, I'm going to print that, and then they just have a collection, and then they pick their forces from. But where that where the theory of a miniatures range and the rules hits the reality of what people are actually going to have on their shelf, like you say, and how much of that, how many models make up a collection, how many, because this isn't a game where we sell squads of 10 Space Marines or 30 Goblins. It's like you have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 Zeos on the table. You can have support. Are people going to, like drones? We can see multiples of. Are people going to have? Do people want to have 3 different skirt gutters? Because actually they're going to have a force with that, and it'd be nice to have a variant on that because they don't want them on. Right. They occupy a place between being a character model and also not a character model. That kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff we're still going to find out over the next months and years of like how actually does this interact once it gets out into the public, and how does the range develop? Right. How do we make miniatures that people want to collect? Rather than, because there is we do. It's a bit like Blood Bowl's a good example of like, well, you've got a team. Actually, what you do generally is you try and persuade somebody they want another team. Right. Or whatever. But there's only so big you can go with the Genesis collection. It's not like 40k where people just keep collecting and collecting and collecting. So what is the maximum size people are willing to go to their collections for their games? We don't know. And we haven't pre-decided. That's the point as well. We haven't said, okay, right, you all have to collect at least this many models, or we don't want you to collect more than this many models. Right. We'll just find out. So.
You don't have to worry about us. I'm going to buy it. I got everything. I'm going to do everything. So, real quick, I don't want to take any more of your time, but what's on your table right now? What are you painting, or what are you working on?
I'm doing a few more. I'm finishing off my Adeptus Titanicus force at the moment. I've got a couple of Reavers, a Reaver and a Warbringer to finish off with that. I've got some Zero Genesis stuff to paint. I've got some packed stuff. The other guys, I'm afraid. Right. I've been doing those. Got an idea. I've been working on it.
That's all right. When you come to Adepticon, I'll
I've
bring.
been working on working on Iraqi at the moment.
Yes.
I do love him.
Yeah, I do like the
and I've
Rocky a
got a
lot.
bunch of drones and things. So that's mainly where I've been at. Really, my next big hobby project is clearing up all the crap that you can't see piled here, so I can actually find some space again.
Never happens.
Like, no, I've got about 3 square inches, I think, of painting area actually on my painting desk at the moment. So.
It never happens. I clean my area every week, and then the next day somebody comes in and messes it. I don't know if they're goblins here or whatever. It's never
Yeah.
it's, but a cluttered desk is a fruitful mind. So I
yeah. There's a lot of fruitfulness going on. So, yeah. So that's been the main thing. And I'm also on and off. I've been I quite enjoy Warcry as well because again, it's a very interesting game system. It's not many models to paint. I really like a lot of the rather than having to commit to a whole army.
right.
To just like go, there's like 8 or 9 models to paint, and they're all quite different. And it's really narrative miniatures and stuff in there as well. So I've still got quite a lot of Warcry stuff I'm working through. And then you can't see it because I've got the backdrop on, but basically it's not shelves, but I've got wardrobes essentially. A couple of IKEA wardrobes for my games, and I've got some drawers which are just full of like made models of plastic, metal from all kinds of companies, which
Right.
they're so make sure that if I ever do get around to retiring, I won't get bored.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Freaking wish.
Everybody tells me when you're retired you're going to be bored. I says I have way too much. I have enough. If I get stuck in the house for at least 10 more years, I have more than enough. I won't be. I could paint for the rest. I'll run out of paint before I run out of models.
Yeah, exactly.
But Gav,
Um,
this has been an absolute pleasure. I don't know. What do you want to? You want to push like where everybody should go to see Gav if they don't know who you are, or Geogenesis or whatever? Where's the best places to find you?
well, yeah, I mean, geogenesis.com is the best landing point for that. I do have a web page which it hasn't been updated for years, which is gavthorpe.co.uk. And if people really like me, then they can find me on Patreon on Gav Thorpe Create.
Mm-hmm.
And they can, for $1 a month, they can follow me there. That's another one of those, like, I don't have enough time for it, so I don't charge lots of money because it's like, for $1, I don't feel too bad if all I've done is done like I have a Discord which people can ask me questions and stuff on, which has been getting a bit more activity lately, and people can message me. And there's a bunch of short stories on there and stuff people can read.
Okay.
Nothing Warhammer or licensed and stuff, but my own fiction.
Right.
So yeah, and I do sort of like writing workshops and things like that as well. So, but yeah, so that's always appreciated as well. That's cool.
Yeah,
so thanks for having me. It's been great catching up with you.
No, it's been great. Bring those pack to Adepticon. I'll take care of them. I'll bring the guard corps. I got you.
That's cool. Yeah, that's good. That gives me something to aim for then.
Yeah.
It's always good to have a deadline or target, isn't it?
Yeah.
I need to get these done by this.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm looking forward to it. Are you going to be at Adepticon this year, or?
I don't know yet. We'll have to see what the plans and stuff are, timings. I'm not committed to it yet, but we'll see. What travel arrangements and things are. That's part of Christmas. My horizon doesn't go beyond the end of the year yet. I've got a novel deadline in two weeks, so my brain is like.
Oh yeah. We already got our room. It's been selling out like crazy. So we booked our room like a month ago. So
yeah.
And they moved to a bigger venue because the other place was smaller. And I don't know. I guess War Games is becoming. Maybe this is the renaissance of War Games, which would be something.
I know, absolutely. I mean, Adepticons. I mean, we have some big shows here, but I mean, it's great, and it's again, obviously, there's a large Warhammer presence and stuff, but I love going around Adepticon and seeing lots of like different hobby companies and paint companies and the smaller miniatures manufacturers and stuff. There's still a space for them there, which is great. I think it's not. It's still it's still celebrating a variety of games.
Right.
I think that because, like I say, that's why I find interesting. I love exploring. I love discovering stuff. I didn't know. I don't. I like the unexpected novelties. My thing. So like finding a stand and going, oh wow, that looks cool,
Right.
rather than going for a specific thing to buy that and take it. It's like I can order stuff online if I want to do that. Or
Right.
I go to live events to discover stuff and be surprised and kind of invigorated. So and Adepticon's got that. Although I have to remember I have to fit it in the suitcase.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what you do? You got to bring it. You got to bring one extra suitcase just in case for all the stuff that you grab.
Yeah. I just wear all one set of clothes for the entire trip. That's fine.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room.
Yeah. Leave the clothes behind. But Gav, it's an absolute pleasure. We have to do this again because I never really write down questions, and I wrote down questions to ask you, and I didn't get off the first page. So, but yeah, we'd love to do this again. Hopefully, we'll see you in person. But if not, we could do it on the intrawebs. But
yeah.
I from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you. This is for me. This is a great honor, and it was just so psyched to do this. So
Thank you.
Thank you. All right,
my pleasure. Enjoyed it.
Right.
Take care.
Hey, go check out Gav Xeogenesis. We're going to be covering it a lot on the channel, and I just hope this game takes off because it's really good. I really enjoy this. So guys, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and see you in the next one.
Well, guys, unfortunately, this is the end. But don't worry, they will be back next month. And you can check out all the links in the description or show notes for more Andrew and Coach. See you next month.